is Australians, right?
Yeah.
To the right, thank you.
Yep.
Morning, everyone. Hi. You all ready?
Yeah, just turn this off.
Okay. So I'm Kelly. I'm from Social Panda, and we're based here on the peninsula. And my passion is supporting business in the digital space. Because when you're running a small business, I know what it's like myself. And you're trying to get a lot of things done, but you also need a good website and SEO, social media, and all these things are happening. So I support small business to be able to do that for themselves. SEO is the topic that I've chosen for today. I could have chosen quite a few things, but I am quite passionate about SEO. Mainly because I've seen the difference that it makes in my clients' businesses. I have one client who's up in Braidwood in New South Wales, which is a tourist town, very much like the peninsula. And he got a lot of summer sales into his shop. But when he went online and he started to use he had an online shop that wasn't doing so well. We injected SEO into his business and he gets sales all year round, as well as his peak in summer. So it really can make a massive difference. Another client of mine is a tradie, and he's got so much work now just with his website and SEO, nothing else. That's his whole marketing strategy, that he's put up his prices and cherry picking basically his clients, and actually telling people that want cheap work to go and see someone else. So he's in a position where he's going, nah, I just want the high value clients. So I realise not everyone is as passionate about SEO as I am. SEO, search engine marketing, search engine optimization. Have you guys, do you do search engine optimization in your business right now?
I find I get emails daily.
Yes.
From these random places that offer me this, and I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
How about telemarketing calls too?
Yeah, I managed to
times a
head
week?
those off. Yeah, but
Yeah. It's very common.
yeah,
And these calls and these emails, how do they make you feel when you
annoyed.
read them? Annoyed?
Yeah, because I think, oh, I've got another one. You know, clogging up your inbox. I'll be honest with you, that's how I feel.
Yeah. Anything else?
Just bombarded with things that you're not sort of understanding,
Yes.
don't know enough about.
Yeah, totally.
And I think SEO has like dramatically changed over the years. I'm sure you're probably going to say this because, you know, SEO used to be about, you know, maybe paying someone to get #1 rankings on Google, and now from my understanding you can't really do that anymore. It's about more organic content to get up to there.
It
that
is
right?
about being more organic. There's no more shortcuts anymore.
Yeah.
There's no more, get yourself a nice domain name and off you go.
Yes.
It is a lot harder.
Yes, which is
And-
what I think, like, when I get those emails and such, I always think, are they just trying to do shortcuts which don't work anymore? That's, my question.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
There are, the emails that you get, there's genuine people behind them and they are trying to sell you something that's real.
Yeah.
The way they sell you is to scare you, to go, there's a lot of things wrong with your website, like, how do you think you're going to succeed with this? Oh, don't worry, I'll fix it for you. But I'm not going to explain what I'm doing, I'm just going to fix it. Yeah, so it doesn't empower you to help yourself.
Yeah.
So there definitely ways that you can affect your SEO, and there's definitely services that we can provide to do that for you. It is a long-term strategy. So you can't just be up on Google just like that.
Yeah.
It does take time, and there's certain ways that you can do it, and we'll go through and explain it all to you guys.
Perfect.
But at the moment, the SEO industry, their approach to getting your business is to scare you and mystify you and go, you have to sort this out. All your clients are getting your business. All your competition is getting your clients. Is quite common. And just go, oh no, they're not going to me, they're going to someone else. You know, and then they turn around and I get phone calls and emails saying, we have SEO leads for you, do you want to buy them? So I'm not going to buy any leads from people that are just freaked out about their SEO. When I speak to my clients, I like to know they understand what I'm doing and how we do it and how it actually benefits their website. So when they see the results, they know how they got there. It's not a big mystery anymore. And that's what I'm going to give to you guys today. And it's quite a practical session. In your little folders there that Rihanna's given out, there's actually 3 pages there with social planner on the front of them. And it's a little bit of a workbook.
Thank you. Thanks, Seth.
It's in the A4 pieces of paper.
Thank you.
You've all got it?
Yeah.
So you've got the first bit there, which is a bit of a blurb on me and Social Panda. If you open it up, you'll get the first page. It has lots of space for you to write things in the relevant sections. Choose one.
I'll grab it later.
Okay. Do you want to get it now? Because we are actually writing notes on them. Do we have another book on this? So we're going to go through various elements of SEO, and it might look like there's a lot there at the moment, but I'll explain everything bit by bit and ask questions as we go along as well. So the reason why SEO actually exists is because Google and all the other search engines, they're computers. And they can't understand and look at a website like you and I look at a website. So they've tried their very best to work out with algorithms and formulas and things how to actually work out what is the best website to rank. Because what Google actually wants to do is give all its users the best possible search results when they search. So what you need to do, or what we need to do, is prove to Google that your website is worth ranking, that your website is relevant to that search, that it's up to date and has good information on it, that it's a popular website, that it's reputable, that you are who you say you are this business, you are this person, so that it has quality results coming up and you go, yes, that's one of those, I'm going to put them up for ranking. Now, if they're a person like you and me who sit there and look at a website and go, yes, that's a good website, that would be all well and good, but it's not, it's a computer. So we have to make it really, really clear what your website's about to the people using your website and also to Google. So that's where things like keywords come into play. Because it's literally reading a website and deciding on how well to rank you and where to rank you. Alright, so if you look at the first page of your workbook, so there's 3 steps to SEO. One is the keywords, which I've mentioned. Does everyone understand what keywords are when I say keywords? Yeah? So basically what you punch into Google when you're trying to find something.
Yeah. So something related to your business or something related to a key point of your business.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you have what we call on-site SEO, or optimizing your website itself. So that's the health of your website as it stands. And then there's off-site SEO, or link building. Now this is where the is your website popular comes in. So if your website, Google considers your website popular if it has links to it. Doesn't matter if anyone's clicking on those links. As long as it's got links going to your website, it goes, great, that's a popular website. And I'm going to put that up in my search results because it's obviously useful because people are using it. Yes?
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
No?
No, what you're saying is, but why are you saying it's popular even if no one's clicking on it?
From
According to
perspective of
Google.
Google. Because Google crawls the whole web. literally goes through all this information and content,
Yep.
and then pulls it all together and sees it as a web.
Yeah.
All connected. So if this website's got lots of connection points,
Yep.
then great.
So
It's not going to get there and work out the traffic on every single thing from here to there, blah, 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 blah. It's a little bit more superficial. Your traffic, the traffic on your website does influence Google as well.
Yeah.
But as far as looking at link building, it's looking at, and we'll get into link building a little bit later. But generally,
just so
Yes.
quickly, so with that, just by putting your URL on the bottom of a LinkedIn post or a Facebook post or something from the company, that would increase it as well.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
is it because we're making Google's job easier?
We're proving, we're not really making its job easier, we're proving to Google that we're worth ranking.
Right, so we put in the effort.
We, we're kind of fitting ourselves into computer mode.
Yeah.
Because Google can't infer anything or look at a graphic and realise what it is.
Yeah.
We're making it easy for it to understand.
Okay. Yep. I'll get it now.
Yeah?
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
So therefore, it might be good to say, connect with local businesses that could effectively, like you might write an article, for example, for like a newspaper and get them to link that back
Correct.
to your website.
Yes.
That's why you should kind of build ambassadors in a sense. Okay.
Yes, and there's lots of different ways that we can do it. That's definitely one example.
Okay.
Yeah. But leave link building for now. It's a little bit later. We'll get
Yeah.
more into it. First of all, we need to look at your keywords. And what you've got there in front of you under the little keywords section, if you look at your piece of paper, you've got 3 little categories on how you can kind of brainstorm your keywords. So the first thing is like your overall business. Dog training, right? Someone's going to type in dog training when they want a dog trainer. All those sorts of things. Cleaning, makeup artist, restaurant. What else have we got?
Psychologist.
Psychologist,
Insurance broker.
insurance,
Lead generation.
lead generation.
Stationery office manager.
Yeah.
Telstra.
Telstra.
Yeah.
Yes, good. And makeup artist. Good. So that's definitely your number one keyword that you're going to have in there. And variations on that too. The next one is your actual services. So even though, say you're a makeup artist, you might offer weddings, events, other beauty, special occasions, that sort of thing. So you'll want to actually have those as part of your keywords too, because people can be more specific when they search. Any other examples of services that relate to you? They're a bit more specific than the overarching what you do, what kind of type of restaurant are you?
Belly dancing,
Belly dancing?
Turkish restaurant, Mediterranean.
Well, you can say you did it then.
Is there a limit? Like, do you have a sense of a limit of if you've got like 25 different services that you can do? Are you saying put all 25 on, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no limit. The more information you have on the website, the easier Google will find what's relevant for you. So if you have 20 services, then yes, you'll want Google to find you when someone searches for this service and when someone searches for that service.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Definitely. Yeah. The other important keyword is your location. So, if you have a cleaning business, a restaurant, you don't really want to come up for people in Northern Territory.
Yeah.
So you want your website to specifically say Mornington Peninsula, or the particular place you are, or your entire service area. Maybe you service Mornington Peninsula and Melbourne, so there's two areas.
Yeah, because I was going to say, out of curiosity, like if you've got an office in Melbourne but you facilitate nationally, is it a good idea to put your office but then
It
the
is.
national, like how would you do that nationally?
Servicing Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra,
Okay.
Put the keywords in there of the major places that you actually service. Yeah. If you say national, generally people aren't going to search for
National provider.
lead generation national.
Yeah.
They'll search for their area or their closest metropolitan area. Okay, good. So once you've gone through that little exercise, you'll actually have a list of all the keywords that are relevant to you. And you'll find somewhere on your website already, so you can use that. You've already kind of defined that when you worked out what was on your website as well, so that can be a clue too. Alright, any question on keywords before we move on?
Would you be optimising for, we've got Yoast on our website, so if I was putting a product in, I would just, instead of trying to get all stationery or whatever, I try to optimise it for that particular product.
Definitely, because someone might search for that product. Yeah. Yeah. And I will mention that in just in a minute on website stuff about how you actually incorporate that into your website. Yeah.
So is a website, is a website name as well as being a link, is that also a keyword or parts thereof?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If your name, I'll get into that a little bit later on URLs and keywords, because that is does get confusing sometimes of what used to happen and what now happens now. So I will explain that
Thank you.
a little bit later. Okay, so we review a lot of websites in order to optimize them for SEO, and we come across a lot of the same problems again and again. So what I've actually done is given you a list of all the most critical problems and the most common. So you may find, if you're quite familiar with your website, especially if you've built it yourself or been quite involved in building your website, who's done their own website?
No, we've been involved in it.
Not for a long time.
Okay. Anyone else pretty across their website, how it works? You obviously, if you're into Yoast, yeah. Okay, good. So you could probably go through and tick off a few of these as we go. It's a bit of a checklist. So anything that you know is already sorted for you, you can tick off. At the end, you'll find there's a little bit of an action item for you to go ahead and do when you get back to your computer. So, the list. Okay, now this comes back to the question of services and if you put all your services on your website. Yes? Put all your services on your website and you have one page for every one of your services.
What about how now the websites have changed as well, you tend to scroll down and keep scrolling as well as having the sort of points at the top, if you will, to direct you directly down that, but it's not necessarily a page.
Oh yeah, that is a page. If you've got a page with links bouncing people down, that's page.
Still a page, because that's the way they do it now. They don't sort of scroll across so much. Some do, but I think we've got a bit of both on ours.
Okay, if it's something important, if it's a service that people are going to search for, put it on a separate page. Because Google is going to rank every single one of those pages.
Okay.
Right, and if you've got it all put into one service page, Google just finds a jumble of everything and will throw that page up if you're lucky.
So that's what we've got. We've got the front page explaining and scrolls down, and then if you want to find a practitioner, it's a different page, and you want to find locations, it's a different page, you want to find services. It's
That's
all
correct,
there, but it's also there. Yeah.
That's right. And then when you go to your services, you want one page for, I don't know,
Therapy.
personal support.
Yeah.
One page for
Reporting and assessment.
So they're physically different pages. So Google can look at that page and go, right, this is about, what was one of your services?
Reporting.
Reporting. Bang. That person searched for it, that's the page. And it gives you more opportunity on that page to actually put your keywords in, because it's just about that. Similar for products as well. So if you've got a product, a particular product, say it's pencils, coloured pencils, a packet of coloured pencils, That one page is optimised for pencils, or even the particular brand, everything like that. Yeah. Now the other important thing, one, you have a separate page for all your services, or all the important things, products, all the things you want to rank. And then you need to get 250 to 300 words on that page. Because Google doesn't think that anything with less than that is really worth ranking, because it can't really see any information there. Because remember, it's trying to give things that are really relevant to its users. And if someone is searching for something, they really want to find it and they want to know about it. So having a decent amount of content, as in words, on a page is really important if you want it to rank. Now that won't be every page on your website, the About Us page. You don't necessarily want that to rank, keep it simple. But for pages you want to turn up in search engines, you want a decent amount of words on there. Yeah? Break it up with pictures, don't give people a big, block of text that they'll never read. Have it laid out nicely, but the words do need to be there. And the keywords exist in the text that's on the page. So not all your keywords have to be on every page, but the keywords relevant to that page, so the particular service and probably the location as well. Make the language on your website natural, so people will read it, and it's easy to read, and you haven't put keywords there just for the sake of putting keywords there, because Google can understand that now too. It's getting a bit smart. It's like, hey, you've just stuffed keywords into this page. So keep it natural, keep your user in mind, the person that's actually reading your page, because they are the most important. But be aware that your keywords exist 2 or 3 times max in a page. You don't have to go crazy on it. Yeah? So that's the website structure. And the second little block there of 3 is keywords. So page titles and URLs. So your home page is going to have a title on the page, and it'll need to include the keyword that you identified as your main business, the ones we talked about earlier. On your service page, a title and the title of that service that is your keyword that you've identified. And when you actually name a page on your website, it will come up in the URL. So that's the web address. It will say www.yourname.com.au/page name. So make sure your keyword's in that page name.
As a quick question on keywords, are you able to search and find the most searched for keyword in your industry, for example, easily?
We do that for you. I wouldn't say it's easy. It's crunching a lot of data. It's working out what is most searched and what has more competition, what has less competition, and working out the ways to do it. You can do it if you play with Google AdWords, and you can pull it out of there, but I wouldn't say it's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was suggesting you come up, you brainstorm, but you can pay someone to do that for you, yes.
Okay.
Can you give me an example of what?
Oh, well, so I run a lead generation company called the Promo Donna, and we actually do cold calling and direct marketing and things like that. I'm actually speaking a little bit later about it. But with that, I believe, even though we don't like to call ourselves a telemarketing firm, people would probably search for telemarketing rather than lead generation. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm wondering, and maybe I need to meet and talk to you, because I think, maybe our keywords are not in line with what the marketing industry or that industry's, people are searching for.
Yeah,
so
you need the most common word that people would type.
Yeah, so for example, like our keywords are probably more lead generation at the moment, whereas people are probably searching telemarketing, and then we're getting overlooked because of that.
Okay, yep.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Good. Alright, so the next place you need to put it is in metadata. And metadata is the data that the search engines see, but your users don't see. So title and description, and that's what you're referring to in Yoast. Yoast, if you've got a WordPress website, allows you to put in the title and the description of a page. And there'll be someone on your website where you can put that in. And of course, in the actual text of the pages, as we discussed before. The other element for Google, it needs to know that it's up to date, that it's useful information, that it hasn't been sitting there for years. So you need to update your website on a regular basis. A way you can do that is to put a blog on your website, because that means you're also always putting up new content on your web page.
So does that cover the whole site name or just the individual pages?
If your website is looking like it's being up to date, you don't literally have to touch the home page every couple of weeks or anything like that.
Okay.
But if it's fresh, especially blog post is coming just on one part of your website, then that helps.
Yep. Okay.
Be reputable. So I'm just going to go through these quickly because you can actually Google them when you want to do this and find specific instructions. Register with Google Analytics and Google Search Console. These are Google tools that allows Google to find your website easily and know that you're real, that authenticate that it's you. And get an SSL certificate. Basically, you contact your hosting provider and getting a secure certificate, which proves you are who you say you are. And give a good user experience. One of those is that your website loads fast. I've given you a link there, tinypng.com. Upload your images as they are. It'll shrink the size, not the physical size, but the size it saves at. And then you can put that smaller image up on your website and it'll load faster. Really, really important. Because also if people don't want to go to your website and it loads too slow, they're out of there. Yeah.
I do that.
Not sticking
I'm like,
around for
oh, I bugger this.
Yeah.
I'll just get out of it.
So it's really
I have
important.
no
for users.
patience.
Yeah.
You need to remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, down here in the grey box, when you are looking at doing a new website, make sure you think about SEO and make sure your web developer is thinking about SEO. Not all of them do. A lot of them are concerned about giving you a really good looking website, which is fantastic, but then you'll come to us and say, I want SEO, and we'll go, well, you need a website redesign because there's no words on your page, you know, and all these things we've just talked about. So I've given you a list here which you can literally copy and paste and send to a web developer and say, will you be including these things? It just lets them know that that SEO is important to you and you want a website that will rank. Okay. Link building. So this is what we were talking about before. So now that your website actually is a website that Google would like, and you're, you know, making it easy for it to understand who you are and what you do and all the different pages and how they relate. Now you want to look like you're popular to Google. So this is the link building we're talking about. So examples of links going back to your website. One was blogging on external sites. Social media.
Yeah.
So in your own social media post,
Yeah.
put it in a couple of times a week where it looks relevant.
We post, but I don't recall if the URL's in there. I think the girl who's doing it puts our names up there and what the post is about and a link to get more information on the post, but that's not coming to us. That's actually going to like an external.
Yeah.
So we need to put just positivepsychology.net.au somewhere in there.
Yeah, where it's relevant. So
Yeah.
having a blog on your website means that's very relevant too, because you can legitimately link to your website.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah, that's
information
right.
that they're going there
That's
for.
what
So
we're
if you can
doing,
make it
yeah.
relevant,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's always
They're
relevant. Yeah. Yeah.
Other people linking from their social media to your website helps too. Business listings,
Yeah.
yeah. Business directories, you have your link put there on the website. press releases, if you do press releases, put them up on press release sites, they'll definitely have your URL in there. So anywhere across the web that you can feel you can get your links to. Now it is important that you don't get links too fast, because Google does look out for things like that. It looks out for what you were talking about, where people are doing things unnaturally. So get a moderate amount of links every month, regularly, and Google go, yeah, these guys are growing in a normal manner.
Okay.
Yeah. So put aside every month time to build links.
So if you put a link to someone's, you get someone, basically I'm getting to reciprocal links, good or bad, or it depends if it's done slowly.
You get the links.
Like if I link to your page, you can link to my page.
Yeah, we can all just do that. We're going to link to each
Yeah,
other
that's fine.
today.
Yes, you can.
You can.
They always have the chalk.
You want to make sure that when you link to your page, you're not giving away your link juice,
Okay.
right? You also want to keep your value on your website. So be careful who you give your links away to as well. If you've got people that are in your industry, you don't want to give away the value of those keywords to the other person in your industry, but if they're quite different to you, then great. If you're going to link to, you're a restaurant and you're going to link to the Peninsula Hot Springs, great.
Yeah.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
sort of thing. Okay.
Would it be just a link, or is it best if it's in the context of an article?
You want to make
or
it,
something?
yeah, you want to have it context, you want to make it real. Yeah, definitely. So, running out of time, but one thing I really want to tell you, fast tracking your SEO, especially if you are a local business. Google My Business, which is the local search that comes up. Whenever you type into Google, you get a little box up the top that gives you at least 3 businesses that are close by that match. It's all driven by Google Maps. You put your, especially restaurants, things like that you need to be close to take the services of. Put yourself on Google My Business. You'll come up in that where you're relevant for the search and your location, and it's before any of the other search results.
Oh, it's on here.
So it is actually very valuable.
Yeah.
Under Fast Track Your SEO on your piece of paper there,
Alright.
there's a link to the Social Panda blog post that tells you exactly how to do it. It'll take you through the whole thing, and it's done very simply and it's free. So it's a must-have for local business. Cool. Alright, any
Now I've just got to get a
questions?
website.
Yes. Was it actually the
Then I'll
best?
be fine.
It's the best time to learn about SEO before you do
Oh,
your website,
yeah.
not after. Because after you have to fix it before you can design it to suit.
So do you recommend setting up your own website? Is that
I couldn't do it
the
myself.
way to go, or get it done?
I struggle on.
Professional is always better because you're going to have these sorts of things covered. You get a professional writer, and it will be designed in a way that the users can understand quickly,
Yeah.
and they can. Your call to actions are defined and all those sorts of things. You get a better website if you do it professionally. Okay, good. So you now have the tools that you can use to actually contribute to your own SEO. If this is something that you're really not into, don't have time for, we can do it for you.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it does take a little, it can be technical. So if this is the kind of thing you want to, throw my way, then you're quite welcome to. At the bottom of your thing, you have a voucher for $50 off a month on the link building program. As you know, you have to do the overtime every month. And all you need to do is just mention that you're here today. And that's yours. Cool. So I'll be around. If you've got any questions, please come and talk to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You better come over.
And all of a sudden they have no product to sell, and we have a situation. There are actually businesses out there that can make a loss, but can survive because it has funds such as, think of a lot of our IT high-tech companies. You know, Google and Facebook didn't make profit for years. They made losses every year, but yet they were able to still keep going. And that's because they were able to get cash flow from investors. Look at Xero accounting software. So we're big fans of the accounting software. This is the first year that they've actually they've broken even.
How long have they been on?
They've been going for about 12, 13 years. But all they've done, so they broke even this year. Before that, they've made losses.
So what are they
Why?
just paying wages?
They had, they have cash flow from investors.
Yeah.
So they had the cash flow coming in from investors to pay, and if they can pay the wages and pay all of that, they can keep going. They spent every bit of money they had in investing in the software and making the software better and better and better and beating the competitors. So they got market share on their subscribers, and now they've broken even. So from here on, it's only going to potentially go up. Who knows? Predicting it. Because they've now got to that point where they've been able to blow the competitors out of the water.
Like
Unfortunately, like MyOb, yeah. Unfortunately, most of us don't have someone who's willing to give us all that cash and keep that cash flow going. But that's where it is important to look at and say, well, you can have a good business, a great business idea that can still actually not succeed because they haven't had the cash, and then you can have a business that's not making profit at that point, but they've got the cash flow. And unfortunately, if you're making losses as a small business, the banks don't normally want to know you. So to be able to get that cash flow. Some of the differences that you'll have, your GST, so those registered for GST, it hurts your cash because actually you've collected that GST on behalf of the government, which is a really nice free service that you do provide to the government. You don't get much thanks for it. But it was actually never your money. So you collect the GST from the customers. Yes, you get to claim and offset the GST that you have paid to your suppliers. You need to give the net to the tax office. It doesn't affect your profit and loss, but it does affect your cash, because I always see a lot of clients come BAS time, panic, where's my cash for that? But the thing to remember, it was actually never your money. So that's where quite a lot of my clients start to do a GST bank account. And every month, they look at what their GST for that month is. They go into their Xero, and there's a report. We say to them, just do that report, and that'll tell you how much your GST for the month is. And then they put that into, they transfer it into another bank account, because it's not their money anyway. So they've got that. Loan repayments, as I said before, like your hire purchase or your loan, the interest is tax deductible, so that's going to impact your profit. So the $10 interest is tax deductible, but the remainder loan repayments not. But you still have to pay that cash, and that's where you're going to have a bit of the difference. Cash spent on assets, it can affect your profit because of the depreciation. With the new tax rules, we are able to claim a lot more than we have in the past. But there is going to be potentially a disconnect between, I've just spent X amount, 50,000 on a new car, and I can't write it off. So my cash has gone out, or you financed it, but we only get a small deduction. And then the depreciation is where we're saying that you've bought the table and it's going to last, and we're going to depreciate that. At the moment, the tax rules are allowing you to do it a lot more accelerated, which is great. But it is usually something that if you buy a car, and unless it's under $20,000, you're going to have to depreciate that over a few years. So this is really to understand the difference between your profit and your cash. Your business profitability is not always your bank account balance, but your bank account balance is going to enable you to keep going in the business. So I'll go through the working capital cycle and then the cash conversion cycle. What I want you to do is, this is something when you're at home to try and have a look at, when are your customers paying, and how much of a community service are you providing to your customers in the way of free financing. And this is really, sometimes when you actually go through and do that, it can be a bit of an eye-opener to understand that you're actually another funding option for your for some of your customers. So the working capital cycle is basically, we're looking at, if you're a service provider, you've got your cash, you've got, you make the sale, they make the payment, that comes into, they owe you the money, you get the amount, and your cash is flowing through from your sale, accounts receivable when they pay you. And if you do have, as a service provider, if you have wages in on that as well, because you've got others working for you, you're going to be paying out the wages. But your Your cycle is really dependent on the sales you make and how soon those customers pay to pay you. If you're a retailer manufacturer, you're going to add into that cycle that you actually have to buy stock for you to sell. And then how long is that stock going to be? Now, I've had clients that really love a certain product and they buy lots of this particular product, but no one else wants to buy it. So you've got to look at how long are you holding that stock, because you're often buying a stock. You may have 30-day terms, you may have to pay for it when you buy it, and then you're waiting to sell it. So you're actually, the money from a cash flow perspective is sitting in the value of that stock. And many times I've seen clients where they've got no cash, they've made profit, and and all their cash is locked up in this stock. So you'll often see, when you see a business do a quick clearance sale, it may be that they actually just want to get cash flow coming into the business. So in a retailer manufacturer, you've got cash in the pocket, you're getting the cash out and you're buying the stock, and you're making a payment to the supplier. You might have work in progress, or it just goes straight on the shelf for the retailer. You're waiting for the sale, and then retailers, lucky, they tend to get the sale on the spot, so they get the money on the spot when they've sold the products. Manufacturer may have 30 days or accounts receivable, and then you get your cash back. So when we're looking at a cycle, we're trying to say, well, how long is it from the cash coming out of our pocket that we actually get it back in our pocket with actually some top up, because that's our profit, that's our extra cash that we're getting back. So if I break that down, and this is something that you've got the slide, so you can have a look at trying to even think about it yourself from your own business perspective, is how long do I have my cash locked up that I can't access, and then I'll go through some of these pain points and how we might be able to improve that. So we call it a cash conversion. The day from starting where you buy stock, so day zero, you buy stock from the supplier, put your hand in your pocket. The supplier may give you 35 days to pay for it. So you've had the stock for 35 days available for sale, and you haven't had to pay for it yet. So that's a positive, that's a good win. There will be situations where you're required to pay straight away, especially when you've got staff, they expect to get paid every week, so you could see them as somewhat in the supplier. You've got to pay them, but you might not make the sale till later. They want to get paid each week. So when you're paying the supplier, then you're getting a cash out. So day 35, if we had 35-day terms, then the cash is going out of our pocket and into theirs. At the same time, because we got the stock on day zero and we sell the stock to the customer on day 65, we've actually held the stock for 65 days. And this is a really interesting one for clients to have a look at what it is that they're selling and how long they're actually holding the stock for. So for 65 days, you're fortunate you haven't had to pay for it for the first 35 days. That may not always be the case, but for 65 days, you've had that stock there where it's basically money out of your pocket at that whole time. I've seen some clients where they've got some items that they're stocked they haven't sold for over a year. So they've just had money in that stock for that time period. You've sold the stock to the customer. Now, if you're a retailer, often they get it on the credit card straight away. We're getting instant. It can be with some, you issue that invoice and you might even say 7-day terms, 14-day terms, but you work out the average person takes 45 days. So you've just given 45 days of free funding to someone else. And so it can actually be from the day you bought the stock to when you actually receive payment, can actually be up to potentially 110 days. And that's where you can calculate it from your perspective. So I look at the cash conversion and say, well, cash came out, so I had 65 days, how long I held the stock for. I had 45 days to get the money back from the sale. I take off the 35 days that the supplier gave me. So if you're in a position where you're having to pay on day one, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So you've got actually 75 days that you're funding your business. 75 days that you're constantly, and that's why when you see people starting a new business and getting cash flow, that's often part of the challenge. Also when the business is growing. So the number of businesses I have seen, and this is the time when you really need to be focusing on the business, they get a great business idea, business starts growing, they have some cash flow, but they're on top of it, and then they want to take the business to the next level. To do that, you need 75 days of funding to be able to get yourself to that next level, to be able to bring the business up to that next level. And that's why you may see what you might see businesses around and think, but that was a really great business, what a great idea, and it failed. It's often managing through this growth period here. And that can be at different stages. New business starts, might get to 200,000 turnover, and will start to have these pain points. I see it a lot when you get a successful business. Maybe they're at the 800,000 turnover, really doing well, and then that tipping point of getting over to the 1 million, 1.2 million turnover, and all the costs that go with it. And this is where they start to the cracks start to come through on that. And so being able to understand the cash conversion cycle can really, really help the business. I won't go through then the mechanics of the work example because I know we're a bit short on time, but if someone has any questions. But we look at with clients on how you might be able to improve the cash conversion cycle. So this is just one that I ran the numbers on just to show that with this particular client, the cash cycle was 76 days in total. That other example is 75, but this one was I guess a real life example. It was 76 days. So I worked out and I said, well, if we implement a few strategies, do you think that we could improve your debtor days by about 9 days? And they thought that was possible, like we were gonna, they were gonna chase things up a bit more regularly. I looked at also their inventory days, amount of time that they had stock on hand. And I thought, well, can we improve that by about 6 days? And I kind of worked out how I'd try and shorten that by the 6 days. When I worked back on the numbers, I actually freed up, because remember that's funding, I actually freed up by doing this nearly $53,000 in cash that otherwise they would have had to have that bank overdraft to keep the funding going on it. So even just a few days, otherwise you are actually basically giving free funding to whoever your customers but you're always willing to ask your suppliers for that as well, though. So plans for improving cash flow. Really, the top actions that I want you to take away, I guess, from today is really to look at making sure that you understand your cash flow better. And a lot of us do get busy, but trying to understand, well, when does my cash come in? I make the sale, when does my cash come in? When am I paying my bills? Prepare a cash flow forecast. You don't have to do the absolute glamorous one. Something is better than nothing for you to be able to forecast. In this next month, these are the sales I'm going to make, but generally my customers pay every 30 days. So those sales I'll receive next month. When do I have to pay my suppliers? When do I have to pay my staff? And then you can try and work out, we've got you in a sense profit and loss. These were my sales for the months, these were my costs, but when am I going to get the cash? And trying to understand, we do a lot of the cash flow with clients, and I had one yesterday where we were doing it and they've got a big shipment thing coming in from overseas, and we've worked out, okay, you're not going to have any cash in October to pay that. Here's how much you're going to need. So let's go to the bank and see if we can get some trade finance, just 100,000 to tie you over for that. That will then be their stock for quite a bit of time. So incorporate or build the forecast into your accounting software. So if you're using an accounting software, put the budget in there so you're constantly focusing on that. Set a cash flow improvement plan, and actually whether it is I'm going to make my debtors pay me sooner because I'm going to do these, I'm going to chase up sooner. Big one for tradies, if you don't invoice, you don't get paid. So if you delay 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks because they're too busy, well guess what, you just added 2 weeks onto the time and you're going to get paid. So they're really easy to work with because as soon as I do that, you can improve cash flow overnight. Great, I think you've done such a great job, and you're like, well, we've just invoiced quicker. Yeah. So that's really, but it's those simple things that sometimes you just get busy. Oh, I'll do the invoicing tomorrow. Having someone independent to hold you accountable to make you do it. Have you done that invoicing? You're doing it you're going to do it every Monday. You're going to do the invoicing. So some of the 7 key causes of poor cash flow, and then I'll go through each of those to kind of brainstorm on how you might improve those, is accounts receivable process. So resulting in basically your debtor days going. So if you send an invoice and then you're like, oh, I don't want to follow up with them because, you know, I've got a good relationship, or if they're such a great client and you've got such a good relationship, why aren't they paying you? You know. So we do things that, like on the accounting software, can do the automatic email follow-up, or you just follow up after a week, 2 weeks, whatever your trading terms are. But you need to have a look at your process and see, well, how can I start to improve that on the accounts receivable. Accounts payable, have a look at the supplier terms. So if you are having some cash flow challenges, you know, have a look, what can you do on improving that from your supplier's perspective to hold out on paying some of those. Some of them you may not want to because you need to keep that ball going. Carrying the inventory process, carrying too much stock, if it's not selling, like just because you like those candles and no one else does, don't keep buying them because they're just sitting in there. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about that? So, in accounting terms, is stock an asset or an expense?
So when you buy it, it's an asset, and since it goes onto your balance sheet, you've got it as an asset to sell. When you sell it, we actually look and say, okay, you sold it for $100, so we put that as income in your profit and loss. What was the cost of selling that item you sold for $100? Let's just say it cost $50. So we would, or the accounting system would automatically take it out and put it into your profit and loss then, just the cost.
That bit's an expense.
Then that becomes an expense and your stock on hand, it reduces.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, but your inventory process, what is the process that you have? How can you turn that over? Should you be doing a special on particular inventory items? Are you managing how you're buying? When you're buying, are you buying in bulk to go and save money, but you're hurting your cash flow? Because sometimes you might just have to pay that bit extra and not get the volume discount because you actually need the cash flow and not have your money held up in that. Could be inappropriate debt or capital. Maybe have a look at, I see a lot of clients when they start, they look at an overdraft and then they start using their credit card to fund things and you're paying a lot higher interest. So what can you do and work with the banks to be able to restructure on that? Overheads, going through your overheads and having a look, what can you reduce? What you know, is it electricity? You know, what is it that you can reduce on your overheads? What are you not getting that value back, and get rid of those? Look at your gross profit margins and seeing if they're too low. So that comes back to your question on when it was, do you recognise in the profit and loss for your stock? It's surprising that there's a lot of businesses that may not know the true cost of what it is to sell a particular product or provide a particular service. So if you're a service provider, how much does it cost you on so the gross margin is looking at what we in accounting terms call variable cost, meaning if you make this sale, what extra cost do I have? So not my rent, because whether I sell anything or not, I'm still paying my rent. So what extra costs do I have to incur to do that sale? Big one on that gross margin is often a lot of small business owners forget to pay themselves. So you need to include your time in that. So, you know, if you're a massage therapist and the service is being charged at, say, $80 for the massage therapist service, and you have someone come in, or you do it yourself, because either way, you still need to get paid, you know, that gross margin may be that you're paying that person $45. So what if these people start saying, no, I want 60? And I've heard that, you know, that kind of situation. So making sure that your gross margins are at the right level. You will have situations where you can't increase your revenue much more, unfortunately. There will be some price points, but having a focus on that, and also looking at products. If you're not making an appropriate margin on the product, and there isn't any other reason to have the product, so maybe you have a product that you don't make much margin on, but as a result of that product you sell 10 other products, you might keep it, but otherwise you may be best to get rid of it and bring in some other products. And it can really also be your sales levels too low, and that's when you might go and speak to Kelly about getting your the marketing increasing and trying to say, well, I've got these fixed costs, I've got my rent, but I'm not getting enough on the revenue to come in. So if I go through some of these, and I'll bounce back to you as well. Accounts receivable process. Do we just sit and pray and hope they all pay? What do you think we might want to do to improve our customers paying? What might be some of the things we might want to do?
I think a lot of it's habitual in my business, like that client because we have a certain period where we pay out as suppliers, being the insurance company, it's trying to break that habit of, they always pay it 90 days. Well, we have to pay it for that at 90 days.
Yes, so you're doing free funding.
Yeah.
So when are you paying the insurance?
At 90 days.
So
if you've got a client
Yes.
that doesn't pay you till day 89, you still got to, and I'm trying to sort of say to my...
But when are you paying your suppliers?
So the client gets the cover from day one.
Day one,
If they don't pay for 90 days, and I'm trying to...
So you don't get the cash for
educate
90 days, but when do you have to pay the insurance company?
Within 90 days.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah,
So if
so
they
you're
pay you
right on the
120
mark.
days,
Yeah.
you're giving free funding for 30 days.
So I've tried to instill every Monday we do debtor Mondays.
Yes.
All right, Monday's a bit of a settling in day, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want you to ring all your customers, and they're a bit recalcitrant. They want, we've always,
No.
we're not making money.
Because if you improved yours to, let's just say, they've got the coverage,
Yeah,
right? So they're getting the service.
They're getting the service.
And you could actually make you could get so much free money.
Yes.
Because if you could actually turn around and say, well, you've got the coverage,
Yeah.
if you didn't pay double AMI,
Yeah.
you'd lose your coverage in 2 weeks,
That's what I do.
right?
Yeah,
And you
that's
can,
what I
in
say.
your, I guess your retail
Yeah.
type insurances.
Mhm.
So if you said to them, you have to pay in 30 days or you're done, you would actually get yourself 60 days worth of free
Exactly.
money.
And we say
We'll be
that.
all coming to you for
Yeah,
the
you're
life.
lucky that you have 90 days to pay. You should have amazing cash flow, don't you?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to re-educate.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
I know I always say, it ain't made until it's paid. So it needs to be there, but it's getting the people to.
And the routine, that's a really good one to have that routine.
Monday.
And and to have that,
Or answer the phone on a Monday.
Usually invoice earlier. I've got one client that, we usually bill at the end of the month and they have to pay within, 7 days or whatever.
Yeah.
She won't pay until the end of the following month.
Yeah, so you've got to
So
get into that time.
I have to invoice her really at the beginning of the month.
Yep.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she's always a month behind with her payments.
And so this is really good to have a look at your accounts receivable and say, well, what is my process? Don't have a process. Okay, what can I do? And have a look at the way in which the customers are paying. What can I do to improve it? Because if you can slice that time off, it is just free money that you're getting access to.
Yeah.
Or otherwise you're giving funding away on that. You might, depending on it, you might give, and you probably see some people's invoices, they say if you pay within 7 days, you get an X% discount, and so you might want to look at offering that. You do have to look at your numbers and see if that's going to be viable for you, but trying to give some incentives, but definitely the follow-up. If you don't chase, people pay whoever chases, or whoever yells the loudest, that's who they're gonna pay. Then if we look at, accounts payable, and you want to be on the other side. So you've done well to negotiate your 90 days with the, in a sense, with the insurance companies. So you've done well on that side. Going back to some of your suppliers, where you can, there will be some that you don't have any choice with, but maybe having a look at your suppliers. I had one client that, was having some cash flow challenges because they were going through this growth phase. And when we had a look, people were taking a long time to pay, but yet they were paying everyone the day the bill came in. They were on there, they were paying. They just want to pay it all. And that's good if you've got the cash flow, but they were having cash flow issues, which was going to be a challenge for them to help them grow. So we went and had a look and said, well, what are the supply terms for each of your suppliers? Most of them were 30 days. Okay, so let's start paying them every 30 days. Just notify them, because you don't want them, they might be used to getting paid straight away. We've got a new process, we're following your trading terms, just so that they're aware that you're going to be paying on those terms. You might look at even looking at different suppliers if you can on that. Making sure also you're not getting any late penalties. There are, and that's going to hurt cash flow because of the dollars involved, depending on what that is. And just review your payments process. Are you paying straight away, or are you doing it on that extra timing? Inventory process, I talked a little bit before, but maybe actually having a look at, well, what is my turnover on my stock? So not all companies will have a stock system, so to speak, but trying to have a look and say, well, when did I buy those particular products? How long has it taken me to sell? And if I'm only selling 2 of those every month, then and I can get them very quickly, then I should only keep 2 in stock, if that's the way in which you're selling. There will be other products where you might have to keep, 1 of each size or different ways, but having a look at how long you're doing that, trying to track that process. Shrinkage, are you having problems with wastage or stock theft, and being able to track it. So it does come back to being able to understand your inventory process and work out, well, when does my stock arrive and how does that go through the chain. I've had one client that was able to go back to their supplier and say, look, we really love your product. It's really big, large and expensive. Can we maybe hold it on consignment? Because we can't afford to have, you want us to have 3 of your different models on our showroom, we can only afford to basically have 1 from a cash flow. But if you put all 3 there on consignment, the minute itself will pay you straight away. So they were able to negotiate that, and from the supplier's perspective, they want to get 3 out on the showroom. So you can have a look at the different processes on your inventory and see what you might be able to change. The debt and capital, sometimes we all sit and forget, that they've got your credit card, your banks kind of get a bit lazy sometimes. They're not going to come back to you and say, hey, interest rates are going down, so we're going to put yours down. So this is where you might want to have a look at other funding arrangements as well. So we deal with a lot with obviously the banks and working with clients on that, but I've had a lot of clients now where we'll go to the bank and they'll say, oh, we need $50,000 extra on our overdraft because we're going to do this particular, we're getting something in and bigger volume. And the bank's like, oh, okay, I'll just fill in this paperwork, and a week or 2. I had one client that had a container that they literally had already sold it to clients over here, so they just needed this shipment to come in. And the bank was mucking around, and they said, well, if I don't confirm that this shipment's going to be going, and they were wanting $50,000, it would have been, basically the bank would have got repaid within 30 days, and they've been pretty good payers. And the bank was like, oh, do the form, do this. It was one of the big banks. So I said to them, let's try this alternative, because I had quite a few clients use alternate suppliers, such as Moolah is an alternate supplier. Contacted Moolah, they go into, and this is where I guess the technology helps. They went into the Xero file, they saw, because Xero, the accounting software, the bank information feeds in, so there's no manipulation, so to speak. They went in less than 24 hours, we had $50,000 in their account. The interest rates are higher with obviously these, but they were going to repay it in 30 days. So the interest rate on 30 days, even though it was higher, was not that much money. Otherwise, we would have missed the wholesale, which would have meant we would have missed this margin. So we were able to pull that off, and it was really fun when we got to tell the bank when they came back after they already had the money and they'd already done the shipment, and the bank said, oh yeah, so we can do that for you, and we're like, yeah, we've already done it. They got their money, and now they've been using Moolah for about a year. They've still got the bank doing a lot of trade finance, but they don't even bother if they need extra to go back to the bank. They're just calling up, and so Moolah's interest rates then have just gone down as they've gone along because they've got a good track record. So I think the banks, I'm actually doing a presentation in a few weeks' time, or a panel, at a conference where they've got accountant, and they've got some of the big 4 banks and some of the alternate lenders like this Moolah, and they want to talk about, so I've got to talk about what small business wants and what they're doing. So I'm like, how do you do it without saying to the banks, yes. So I've got to work out strategically. But that's because I've got so many examples where, and you've probably seen Prosper's been advertising a lot on the TV as well. Going down. But they're all these. Okay, computer seems to be frozen. That's okay. It'll come back up when they just get their twirly thing. Overheads are too high. It's on your sides there anyway. Overheads are really, those are the things such as like your phone, Telstra, maybe go over to Telstra and ask them to. Although I have to say, you guys are actually pretty good because you usually hunt me down once a year actually, which is good, and change things. So you guys are pretty proactive. They always come back and they go, oh, we can give you more for the same price. So I'm like, good. But having a look at, rent, Rent's a hard one. Obviously, the landlords always want to increase the rent because they've got their own increased costs. But having a look at, I've got clients where so much has become even just in time. So they, had factory in Seaford and it was quite big, warehouse. Well, because they were, the way in which their business had evolved, they were getting stock in and out so quickly. They didn't need that whole warehouse. So they were able to, what was the cost of moving? How can we get your rent costs down? Well, actually, we worked out the cost of moving was quite a lot. So instead of that, they were able to sublet part of their office, and then they were able to get reduce their rent. So having a look at some of those overheads and taking the time to do that, having a looking at your insurances, go and have a chat about insurances. Don't just assume that every time you get that insurance, because again with the insurance, they should be hunting you down. So the insurance broker should be coming to you saying, we need to review your insurances. If they don't, well then you need to speak to,
That's why you haven't had it.
That's right, and so the broker doesn't actually need your money. And then once a year they come to you and they'll say, let's rejig it. And so that's what you want to have a look at your insurances. Otherwise, you get your insurance going, it's gone up again, and you just pay. So it's really important to have a look at those because it's all these little savings that are going to help. Go paperless where possible and use technology. That makes a huge difference. But having a look at just what are your actual overheads, and then trying to work out what it is that you can save from that perspective. Oh, he's gone to sleep and he's coming back up again. Don't you love it when the technology, when it works, is great. He's coming back. He's woken up. He was just tired. Yeah. Equality. He, she, yeah, it. Oh, there you go. It's woken up. Gross margin, I don't know if it doesn't need a password or not. Okay, cool. Gross profit margins, I talked earlier about being too low. You really need to know your gross profit margin. I work a lot with clients on the gross profit margin, contribution margin. What I want to work out for them is, here are your overheads. You're paying rent, you're paying maybe reception before you even open the doors. That's how much your costs are. How much do you need to sell as a sale perspective to get what I would call like your gross margin, contribution margin? So you sell for say $1,000. How much do you need to sell to achieve break even? Because you want to pay your rent and all your expenses. So I want my clients to understand, and they'll never love accounting like me, but I want them to know, I just sold $1,000, and of that $1,000, because we've done our numbers, my contribution margin, the cash that's going to go towards paying my fixed costs, is $200. So on all of that, I've worked out my $1,000. So every sale I get $200 that gets to go to my contribution margin. I work with them and say, well, we need you to sell, let's just say $50,000 so that you cover all your fixed costs. What that does is it gives the client the ability that once they sell over the $50,000, they've already paid their fixed costs. So we've got those covered. So all those 200s after the $50,000 in sales is then straight to the bottom line because they've already paid their fixed costs. What understanding your gross margin? I worked with one client that they hadn't sold to any of the supermarkets or anything like that, and they wanted to, but and they manufacture. They wanted to, but they felt their price point was too high. Oh, the supermarket chains want to screw us down on price. So we went back and actually had a look and said, well, what is it the cost for each of your products to manufacture? What is the actual true cost? What we realised is they didn't understand the true cost to manufacture each of their products. Once they did that, we were able to say, actually, you've got buffer because you're selling it at this price, but if you could go into your Coles and sell it at a lower price but get volume, this is your buffer, this is your contribution margin. So this is where you've got some pricing flexibility. And that was really fun because now they're in Coles, they're in Woolworths, because now they've got the volume. Now before they knew what their price, what their contribution margin was and their true cost of the product, they had calculated it at an estimate, but they'd used, I guess, rent and all of these others, so they didn't truly understand then, okay, well I can negotiate, and if they buy 1,000 off me, I'm happy to take a lower per unit profit, but I'm going to get more coming across. Sales level, if the sales level is too low, and that's easier said than done. We'll go get some more sales. Okay, how do we go and get more sales? And I think you've got a lead generator here who's going to talk a bit more later. You've got your SEO. and really trying to say, well, where do I get my sales? What am I doing, and how should I be trying to generate and even generating more leads? Because not every single lead, you know, you generate the lead, they click, they go on the SEO, and not all of them come through as a sale. How do I get that pull out? If you're a service provider, you might go to like your networking, so you go, you know, and to trying to get your message out there. You want to increase your conversion rates. This is a really fun one when I work with, especially tradies, and I do work a lot with tradies, on increasing their conversion rates. How many people have had a tradie come out and do a quote, okay, and then you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you still don't get that quote, and then you phone up and they're like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you on that quote. 2 weeks go by and you're like, well, I actually need to get fixed. I'm just going to get someone else to do a quote for me. Okay, so we've all done that. And the number of times I say that to the traders, and they're like, oh no, I'll try and get back to them, but probably it could be 2 weeks, could be 4 weeks. And you know, if they can improve their conversion rate, where they went out and saw someone and then convert it into a sale, from them it's been a really easy fix to say, well, I want you to start doing your quotes within the week. So by the time at the end of the week, you have to done every time. If you're going to, don't turn up otherwise. Don't go. Don't say you're going to go. If you go, do the quote and get it out there, and then you'll increase your conversion rate.
Most of those situations are immediate.
Yeah.
If you just want to know straight away.
You want to know. And surely it's not the first time they fixed a toilet. You know, so they can say to you, here it is. And I know they get busy because we all do, but it's trying to have that process in place that says, okay, if you're too busy to quote, then just say, sorry, look, I can't even quote. You'll have to get someone else. But if you're going to go out there, you just use your time. So how much is your time worth? Now do the quote. And so that's where you can look at your conversion rates. How many times are you getting people calling, you're giving information, and then they convert to a sale? What is it that you can do to try and increase that conversion rate? Because even if you only increase it by a small percent, you know, you can make a big difference to your sales. Looking at even transaction frequency, how often do they come to you for service? How can you get them to come more? On your insurance side, you'll be like, you know, we have all of these others, you know, these other insurances. Have you considered travel? Have you considered cyber?
That's what we've got. We have like one little, you know, some clients, and the policy that for a trailer.
Yep.
So, you know, it's not a cost, but we earn like $30.
Yes.
And my team are going, well, you haven't paid your insurance premium. I'm going, well, something's pulling that trailer.
Yes.
You know, say, well, quote on this, or
quote.
make it more than worth your, because it's not worth my staff's while to chase the debtor and to do that. So we've had to do a real big about flip there.
Yeah, and that's a good strategy, because you didn't ask about the car.
No.
So he's probably got it with double time.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and he's probably paying too much.
Exactly.
You didn't ask.
You didn't ask.
He just pays the bill, so you've just doubled your sale.
And I get them to white space. So you've got a client, I get them to look at that client and ring the client and say, what else can we help you with?
Yeah.
Cross-selling.
You've already they're already clients, so they're already happy with you, right? And you didn't ask, and if not, they might not know that you did cars as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And they might just go down, so, and then increasing the transaction value. Love to always put our prices up, but it depends. And you need to look at where you're at. You don't want to be too cheap. Because actually they even say with proposals, if you issue proposals and everyone accepts, then maybe you're too cheap, you know? I think Kelly was talking about the guy that put his prices up. If he was that good, then put your prices up, you know, because otherwise you are underselling, and that's gonna help. Cash flow, if you need help with the cash flow, my details are on there. We help clients in preparing cash flows, whether it be cash flow statements. We help keep them accountable, which is always fun, because you know, they're like, oh, quick, better do it. But I do find if you proactively manage your cash flow and proactively manage how your business is progressing, it does create some really fun tax problems for us to sort out. That's why we really enjoy doing it. Help them grow the business, and then you get tax strategies. So this morning we help. I met with a client this morning, and they do consulting. And they've grown. We've been doing a lot with them in the last year. They did about 120,000 in profit last year, which was good. Revenue now, we're nearly up to $1 million for the year, which was really exciting. And we have a $400,000 profit. So I'm like, I love these problems. I love these problems. Now we're going to fix them all up so that they pay the least amount of tax possible. But it's so much more fun than saying you've got a loss, you've got no money, and you've got no cash. So life's pretty, you know. So it's not that bad to pay tax because it actually means that you've made profit. We're just going to pay the least amount possible. So it is a good problem to have. Hopefully from today you can just at least identify, you know, maybe 3, maybe 1, but do something. I often say, I often start a lot of presentations that, you know, a lot of people will come to these workshops, and this is kind of probably for your whole day. You'll get here and you go, yeah, great workshop, heard a few things, you know, that's good, and off you go and go back to your busy work life and you don't do anything. Will you maybe retreat, you know, oh yeah, I should do that and I'll do it, and I've written down one thing and then not do anything, you know, so you just go back to the auto. Or are you going to take normal amounts of action? So hopefully, like a lot of us were writing down, and I've got a few things from Kelly that she said that I'm going to go and check my website now and check some of those links. And, you know, and so you take normal amounts of actions, or are you going to do massive amounts where you're going to go, right, I'm going to relook at my website, I'm going to do a cash flow, even though it's, you know, I'm not an expert on cash flow, I'm going to do something to try and manage cash. But if you take out from each of the sessions today, really something that you can do, you can really make a big difference in your business. So if anyone has any questions at all on cash flow or... Yeah? No? Excellent. Thank you.
Just so you know, I'm going to cut my rules to be a little bit shorter for you, but for you all. As a bit of background, because we're going to jump straight into it, I think you're going to get some more handout sheets in a second, so that we can run through all of the tips and tricks I'll be sharing today. But a bit about me. So my name is Ashley Al-Sadi. I might have been down today as Ashley Holt, but I got married a year ago, so I kind of did a bit of a rebrand back then as well. So Ashley Al-Sadi, and my company that I run is the Promo Donna, which is a lead generation company. So we are that rare and crazy breed that really love doing the grunt work that most of you want to avoid, and that is cold calling and direct marketing. So I actually started my profession about 14 years ago now. It was actually on the peninsula, so I was actually working for a small sales firm down this way. And I found my love of it, and I found that a lot of people in the team avoided it, that I was the only one that liked doing it, but also that a lot of business owners kept coming to this firm saying, I need something, you know, someone that does what Ashley does. So my mind started ticking away, and I thought, well, I could probably make a business out of this, cold calling for businesses who want to grow. And so 7 years ago now, so I founded the business in July 2011, literally jumped in the deep end and started doing what I love to do best, which is calling from my bedroom, saying to companies, this is who I am, this is what I love doing, and quite quickly, you know, I generated my first clientele. We rapidly grew from there. We've worked with over 100 companies Australia-wide now, and we always are generating highly qualified sales appointments for them, or sales leads. That really kind of depends on the client and what outcomes they're actually looking for. But we're a team of 5 professional cold callers who combined have completed over 50,000 hours of cold calling in our careers. Now, it's probably a lot higher than that because I actually put this presentation together quite some time ago, so we're probably up to about 60,000 hours now or something like that. But the reason I give you this background is because what I have become very passionate about over these years is actually training people in how to more effectively prospect, cold call, or sell. Because I think that it is one of the most paramount things for your business. I know there's been a lot of speakers today kind of honing in on the fact that if you haven't got your sales lead generation in place, if you don't have a process for it or you're not proactively doing it, your business could definitely be in danger. A lot of companies, when they come to the Promo Donna initially, what they'll be saying to me is, we really need to generate new sales leads because a couple of our clients have just left. We weren't predicting that they would leave, and now our sales pipeline is completely bare.
So what I'm passionate about is not only delivering those, lead generation activities for our clients, but also training people like yourselves in how to build your sales pipeline so that you can never, have that worry of where's my next lead coming from. So I work with a lot of organisations and individuals with particular training solutions. A lot of the topics that I cover are things like how to develop a sales process, creating a great elevator pitch, closing techniques, obviously, NLP. Has anyone heard of neuro-linguistics programming here? I see. Yeah, great, that's fantastic. A lot of people haven't heard of it before, but it is the study of human behaviour and communication models, and it's all about rapport building, and I love it because, it's a bit like human psychology, what makes people tick. And if you can actually learn some of these techniques, I believe you can pretty much sell to anybody. So really exciting when I run those types of programs. So also script development and role plays. I'll skip through this. They're just a few of the brands that, I've worked with, training them. A lot of real estate agencies obviously sell a lot. But really there's a vast array of industries that we can work across, in particular with training. But what I wanted to jump straight into you guys with this afternoon was developing a killer sales process. Now I know earlier on this morning you did have a sales presentation, but this is how my one's going to differ a little bit. So obviously I've given you some insight into the fact that I've been a cold caller now for 14 years. And the fact is, each and every day when I'm on the phone, I use this sales process to generate the results that we get. Now, some of you might be sitting there though thinking, well, I don't like cold calling, I don't do cold calling, I don't want to learn this process because I don't want to pick up the phone. The good news for you is it doesn't just have to be about cold calling. It can actually be used for your follow-up calls. It can be used as a sales process when you network. It can be used as a sales process pretty much in any sales situation. So that's why I'm excited to share this with you guys today. So say you connect with someone, at this event, you want to follow up with them, they've given you their business card. If you're sitting there thinking, I don't really want to call them because I don't know what to say, this process is going to help you to pick up the phone and feel a little bit more confident about it. So, hands up here, who actually does use the phone to contact their prospective clients? Yep, we've got a couple, fantastic. How many of you would like to contact prospects but you kind of hesitate because you don't really want to pick up the phone? There's a few. I love the honesty, So just to kind of reinforce again, the reason that I believe a lot of people fear picking up the phone, the reason it's a bit of a dying art, is because they don't have a sales process in place. So again, I'm hoping that step by step, once I take you through this, you might be able to walk away from today and be able to implement this in your own business. Now with the handout sheets that are going to be going around, I'm not sure if they're there yet, but in my little folder, there's actually going to be a script template in there. So again, you can use this script if you want to do your own calls or if you want to do some follow-ups, things like that. So let's jump straight into it. So the first step in my sales process that I teach people is all about preparation. Now when we talk about preparation, there's actually two components to preparation. The first one being your mindset. Now it's amazing because, I think that selling is one of the biggest mindset games out there, and it's probably why I love playing it. I love that whole game of turning a no into a yes. And the fact is, if you can't master your mindset before any sales situation, you're not going to get the results that you want. So what I'm going to share here are some tips about how to master your sales mindset and just, get the kind of results that you're looking for. The first thing that you need to do is to really set some personal goals and, targets for yourself. Now, one tip I'm going to give you, and again, you've probably heard all about goal setting and the importance of writing it down, but I can't stress it enough that you write down the goals that you want to achieve as if you've already achieved them. So, as an example, before any Promo Donor sales cold calling session, myself and my team, what we do is we write down on a piece of paper I generated XYZ company, 3 appointments. And then I'll actually put down the page 1, 2, 3, as if I've already achieved 3 appointments for that client. Now, why that's really helpful is not only does it make me feel a bit more confident that yes, I'm going to get these appointments, but I think it makes it easier when I'm on the phone. If I get a no, I can kind of brush it off and say, well, the next call I might make might generate the leads that, you know, my brain's filtering for. So make sure, again, if you're going into a sales situation, you have some goals mapped out. On top of doing it for, say, a cold calling situation, make sure you're doing it even when you're going to a networking event like this. I mean, you guys might have come into today thinking, well, you know, not only do I want to generate some great information for my business, but I want to connect with 3 people that I can do business with. So have a goal in mind and an outcome that you want to achieve, because otherwise you'll be flying blindly and, you know, you're never going to get great results from that. The other thing that I'd like to share here with people is a bit of a story about the importance of, you know, understanding the energy that you might feed off to your prospective clients. When I started out cold calling, I was naturally quite good at it. You know, I love talking to people. That's probably blindly obvious. And, you know, naturally I could create the results that I was looking for. But there was this one morning where everything started to go wrong. What happened was I bogged the car in the driveway as I was, you know, going out for work. The tyres were spinning, there was mud going everywhere. I was running so late. And then not only that, I tipped coffee down my top. And, you know, everything, it was like a snowball effect. Everything started to go really wrong. But I thought, look, I'm going to get into work, I'm going to start my calling, and I'm going to, you know, just get on with the day. The first decision maker that I got onto, that I was speaking to, said, Ash, I wouldn't buy from you. It doesn't sound like you're passionate about what you do. It doesn't sound like you really want to be at work. And I thought, what has happened to get this, you know, such negative feedback when naturally I'm quite good at this? So on reflection, I realised that it was the energy and the state of mind that I was in. You know, that energy that I had been feeding off from the morning effectively was feeding down the phone to my prospective clients. And I actually shared this story with Vision Australia when I was actually training some blind cold callers. And they said it's a little bit like when we're with our blind seeing eye dogs. The energy we feel, whether we're sad or happy, actually feeds down the lead to the dog. So really remember that when you're in a sales situation, whether it's on the phone or in a networking event, you have to master that state of mind you're in. Quite often my call team and I, we might, you know, listen to some music or go for a walk, whatever it is, to make sure we get into that peak state. Now the last tip I'll give you when it comes to mastering your mindset is also to visualize how you want to be regarded by your prospective clients. What do I mean by this? So earlier on in my career, again, my boss had said, look, you're doing quite well, but you don't sound authoritative. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, well, you sound like a young girl and I don't know if people would want to buy from you. And I said, well, what do you want me to do about that? Because I am a young girl. And, you know, she said, let's kind of reflect on the tonality in your voice. Now, I was doing what a lot of young women do, and that is I had an upward inflection in my voice. So I asked questions like this. Is it something you're interested in? At the end of the question. And so basically it was giving that kind of almost like sounding like I had hesitancy in my voice, and again, not that authority. So she said, look, I want you to go away and think about someone that you think is really authoritative, that you can model your voice on. So what I actually did was I started to model my voice on news reporters. So Ashley Al-Sadi, National 9 News. They speak down with authority. So it is no coincidence when people tell me all the time, you have a great phone voice. That's not an accident. It was all learnt behaviour. And I always love to share that story because, again, quite often people sit here thinking, oh, but I don't have a great phone voice. Practice, 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 and model your voice on people you want to sound like. All right, so I said that when it comes to preparation, which is the first step in the process, was component number 1, the mindset. The second component of preparation is understanding your products and services in relation to what your prospects want. Now, what do I mean by this? And I think, again, this was mentioned a little bit earlier by the other sales trainer about the fact that people don't care really about your business. They only care what's in it for them. So, you know, quite often when we are working with a client at the Promo Donna, we'll ask them, you know, to tell us all about their business. Tell me your pitch. And they'll always go on about their features and benefits and how great their business is. And then what it comes back to, I'll say, guess what? Your prospects don't care. What they care about, again, is what's in it for them. So I'll give you an example here. With the Promo Donna, we're a lead generation company. You know, we've got 5 staff. We've been around for 7 years. I could give you a bit of a pitch with all of those things, but you don't really care. What you want to hear from me are things like, I'm going to help you avoid the sales grunt work that you don't want to do. I'm going to help you to grow your business and fill your sales pipeline. I'm going to make sure that you don't ever have to make a cold call again in your life. Things like that will connect with you, and they're issues that, you know, that you'll appreciate. So when it comes to actually, you know, putting preparation in before any sales situation, you need to, again, appreciate the issues faced by your prospect. So maybe think about the clients that work with you now. Why have they utilised your services? So for example, with cleaning, you know, it was honed in on a little bit earlier that, you know, people are all about trust and security and quality. But, you know, they're probably utilising a cleaner because they don't have time to do it. Or because maybe someone internally had tried to do it before and it always got left to the last minute or something like that. So those kind of stories you can really build on when you're speaking to someone. You know, you could say, look, I run a cleaning company. We work a lot with schools, for example, who didn't have the time or the internal resources to clean themselves. And things like that will connect a lot more with you know, those kind of people. So does anyone have any questions about that? Do you connect with the fact that, you know, your prospects are going to appreciate the issues that are faced by them a lot more than your features and benefits? Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, brilliant. All right, so that was component number 1, which is all about preparation. So before you actually go to market and do your pitch, whether it's over the phone or in a sales face-to-face situation, you need to prepare your mindset and understand the issues that are faced by your prospects. Then we come to the elevator pitch. So hands up here who's all heard the term the elevator pitch. I'm sure you've all heard it. Yep, it's a very salesy term. Now the elevator pitch though, I'm not sure whether you all know where this story or the actual you know, name came from. I love old Hollywood, so I love this story. A lot of script writers back in old Hollywood would never have the opportunity to meet with studio heads or people that actually developed these movies. So what would happen is they would go into the studios, they would jump into the elevator, and they would only have about 10 to 15 seconds to pitch. This is, you know, my great script, this is why it's unique, this is why it's different, and this is why you should produce the movie. Now fast forward to these days, and I still think that we have very limited time to make that great impression with someone and to do a great pitch. So, you know, coming up with an elevator pitch that works for you and your business is so integral. Even if you're doing like a follow-up call or something like that, I think that it's important just to remind people of who you are and what you do. And one thing you can actually do is develop your pitch around the last step that we talked about. So we talked about the fact that prospects are only interested in the issues that they face and how you're going to help them. So try and include that in your pitch. The other important thing to make note of when you're talking about or you're putting together a pitch is making it really clear and concise about who you are and what you do and the purpose for your call. Your opening should also be, you know, unique and different and interesting. And the one thing that I will really point out here about the elevator pitch is practice is so important with this. Because, you know, again, when we work with companies at the Promo Donna and we run a workshop with them to learn all about their business before we start a campaign, I'll often say to them, give me your elevator pitch. Tell me, how do you pitch to market? And no one, it's very rare that people can actually do one in 1 or 2 sentences. They usually babble on for about 10 minutes and you know, give me too much information. So I then tell them, look, come up with a few different pitches that you think would gel with the market and then go and test them out. So go to a networking event, pick up the phone, whatever it may be, test it out and see what works for you. Any questions about the elevator pitch? Is that all pretty straightforward? Okay, fabulous. So once we've actually done the step one, which is all about our preparation, and then we've done step two, which is a great elevator pitch to the market, the next step is to give some great, or ask some great key questions. Now, before I jump into key questioning, and again, I know this was touched on a little earlier in one of the sales presentations about how integral questioning is. The reason that questioning is so important, and I'm going to give you a top tip here, so if you take nothing away from my talk today except this piece of advice, I'll still be very happy, so make sure you take note. So the tip I'm going to give you is the person who talks the most in a sales situation is losing the sale. And I learnt that very early on in my career, and it completely changed the way that I sold to people, because if you think about it, in this day and age, which is so full of information, people believe that they need to bombard you with information in order to sell to you. Or maybe they need to pick up the phone and, you know, you get those average telemarketers that call you up and go blah, 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 and speak for 5 to 10 minutes, just bombarding you with information. You can't sell like that anymore. You really need to, again, address the issues that are faced by your prospect. And the way that you're going to do that is to ask some great questions and get them talking. So what you do after you do that great elevator pitch, which is 1 or 2 sentences, you then ask some great key questions. And now one of my tips around key questions is to ask open-ended questions. Because it's a bit of a rookie mistake from my end. If ever I, you know, maybe lose a sale over the phone, it's usually because I've asked a yes or no answered question. And the one that I hate the most that I'll share with you is this something you're interested in? I'm hearing laughter because I know you guys probably either ask it or you've heard people ask it all the time. And the thing is, when I hear my team say it, I'm always on their back going, oh, that's why you lost that phone call. Because the thing is, it's like a white rabbit. It allows people to run for the hills, and it's usually their opportunity to say, oh no, we're not interested. So instead of asking, is that something you'd be interested in, you need to ask questions that are open-ended and that will give you the information that you need. So for example, with the Promo Donna, we're a lead generation company, as you know, so we would ask something like, you know, tell me about your current sales process. What current sales strategies do you have in place to generate new leads? Have you ever used a lead generation company before? And if so, what were the results that were produced? So those kind of questions are going to get you the information you need in order to be able to sell back to them. And I couldn't stress that enough, that questioning is just really, really paramount. So now we've come to one of my favourite parts of the process, and it's funny that it's a favourite because this is usually the part of the process that I think instills a lot of fear in people when it comes to selling. So we've done some preparation, we've mastered our mindset, we've done a great pitch, now we've asked some questions and the conversation has opened up. Now inevitably what may happen is you may get some objections that arise. And again, as I mentioned, you know, I think when it comes to objections, this is the point where people feel like they're getting rejected by people. They think an objection is a rejection. But what I'd like to reinforce is that I think objections are really more a request for more information. So that person is really saying to you, I don't have enough information, or I don't see enough value yet in what you're telling me, so you need to dig a little bit deeper or help me to overcome, you know, the objection that I have in mind. So the great news for you all is that you can overcome objections, and I'm going to share with you some of the techniques that we use at the Promo Donna each and every day. So the first one that I'm going to share with you is to put the objection up front. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'll give you an example here. We work with a major signage manufacturer and installer. They actually target all the retailers in Australia to do their signage. So this is for storefronts and things like that. Now, when we started the campaign, the spiel used to be something like, hi, it's Ashley, I'm calling from XYZ company. We are a signage manufacturer and installer. You know, are you looking for some signage? Something along those lines. Now, I'm sure you can guess that the response we were getting was, well, we're a retailer, we already have signage and we already have a provider, so why would we need your services? what I decided to change that spiel to with my team was, again, putting the objection up front. So it became, hi, it's Ashley, I'm calling from XYZ company, we're a signage manufacturer and installer. Now, I understand that as a retailer, you would already have signage and you probably already have a provider that you're working with. But in our experience, a lot of companies review this. Can you tell me about your current review process when it comes to signage? It was amazing how the results turned around, because the reason this technique worked was, number one, that prospect saw it as less pressure. There wasn't that, direct sell happening. It was more of a conversation of, tell me a little bit about your review process. They also thought, well, this person understands my business because they know I've already got signage and they know I've got a provider. So again, it built that rapport instantly. So not only did we find those immediate needs, so some companies would say, oh, actually, it's great that you've called. We do have a need for signage right now. Or there would be the ones that maybe said, look, we're reviewing it in 3 months, so give me a call back at that time. So putting the objection up front is really, really paramount, and you can use it in so many situations. Again, having a provider already is one of the most common objections across the board for any industry. I already work with a cleaner. I already have an accountant. I already have a sales firm we work with, whatever that is. So again, I always say, we understand that you would already have a provider in this space. However, I'm calling to really find out how that relationship's going. What's your experience? Dig deeper to find out, what's currently happening. So that's objection handling technique number one, putting it up front. The second technique is to clarify. Now, I know that a lot of people I work with, a very common objection is price. And isn't it amazing how people sometimes say, I can't afford you, and you've not even spoken about the price yet. Like you haven't even told them what your prices are, and they say, no, I don't have the budget. So what that says to you is that it may not actually be price that's the objection. Again, it may be, that they haven't seen the value in what you're delivering yet, or, it may be that they're not the decision maker, whatever it may be. Clarification is really key. So again, they say, look, I don't have the budget right now. I might say, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Do you actually have a budget dedicated to sales that I should be aware of? Or tell me, is it really price? Or, is there something else that, might be a bit of an obstacle for you guys to utilise our types of services? So clarification is very, very important. The other thing is empathy. Now, I spoke about NLP and, the study of human behaviour a little bit earlier. And, I think when it comes to sales, we would all agree that people buy from people that they like. And, I find it's very similar as well that when someone's trying to buy from you, they also want to feel like they are like the rest of your clients. So empathy can go a really long way if they share an objection. If you can share a story of a situation where another client of yours who was very similar in a very similar situation and how you helped to overcome that, that will go a long way. So as an example, if someone calls up and says, look, I'm thinking of using you guys as a lead generation company, but the thing is, we've used a lead generation company before and it didn't produce the results we were looking for. It was really poor quality. Then I would say, look, I'm so glad you flagged that with me. And it's funny, a lot of people when they initially call me are in this very situation. They've used a lead gen company, it didn't work, they haven't got the quality. However, this is how we are different and this is how we can help to overcome, those kind of objections. So yeah, putting the objection up front, clarifying, empathy. Now I want to put it out to you guys, is there any objection that you regularly get that you're a little, like that doesn't cover? Is there anything that you guys frequently get asked or, have an objection come up that you're thinking, well, those three wouldn't cover it?
It's the person who just doesn't care.
Yep.
I don't care. I don't care if you're going to save me $100. I couldn't be bothered talking to you.
Yeah, that's a good one. So you're effectively kind of talking about that person that might say, look, I'm just not interested.
I like nothing more than what you're suggesting. That's my favourite part of it. Like if somebody is sticking their eyes in my restaurant and they're like this, and I get them to come in, I get them to have 2 meals and then some dessert and drink a bottle of wine. It's nothing. nothing, and they didn't even want to come in.
Yes.
You know, they were just walking past. So that's great for me, but it's the person who doesn't care.
Yes.
Who, like, I want to get through to that person.
Definitely. And I guess, look, one thing I'll say to that is, I think that sometimes we would all love to sell to everybody,
Yeah.
wouldn't we? We would love for everyone to be our client, but it's not possible. I mean, look, if I could sell to every single person, I'd be a very rich woman. And look, I can sell to a lot of people, but the fact is, I guess what I'm getting at is some qualification does need to take place. And sometimes when we are on the phone, there is a big difference between an objection and a rejection. Because I think, like you're kind of honing in on or touching on, someone that may be outright not interested doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? And the thing about that is, the question is, do you really want that person to be your customer? Because, you know, it's a little bit like when we sometimes get results for clients. If we've had, you know, someone that was really standoffish on the phone, but we've kind of converted them in the end, it may not be a strong opportunity. I've taught my team to be a lot more qualified in recognising, does this person really care? Are they just saying it to get you off the phone? Because if that's the case, it's not going to be a great lead. So that's probably my feedback on that is, if it is someone who's acting like they don't care, they might not be worth fighting for. It might be better to move on to the next lead. But if there's someone that, you know, is kind of hesitating, like, oh, I'm not sure about coming in, that's when you could probably dig a little bit deeper and find out what's stopping them. You know, what's the issue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Does that answer?
But it's the most exciting part of selling something.
Yes. Oh, that's good. I love that you say it that way. Yeah. Fabulous. Yes.
Do you guys find much that sometimes it's not always the decision maker? You've got to find the enabler in that business or the influencer.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I quite often get asked, I think there's a couple of questions within your question. So the first is the gatekeeper, obviously, and how do we get past the gatekeeper? So there's a lot of techniques to do that. Some of which I'll share, some of which I won't. No. One thing is, you know, you've got to get them on side because, you know, one of our techniques at the Promodon is definitely to befriend them, because the fact is they're the gatekeeper for a reason. And, you know, some people in training will say, oh, I get so annoyed with them because they act like they run the business. And I'm like, but they kind of do to a certain extent. So you need to respect that receptionist. And so the techniques we might use are, you know, making note of their name. So, you know, like if we call up and it's Jane from XYZ company and, you know, we're looking for a decision maker, she says, oh, John's not available. Then the next time we call back, we might say, oh, hi, Jane. Yeah, I called yesterday. You might remember me. I was looking to speak with John. So again, kind of befriending them. And they are the person that's probably going to ask things like, what's the call regarding? Now, a bit of a technique, laugh because it's a common one. The technique that we sometimes use, and this is if you're getting a really tricky gatekeeper, is to sometimes come up with a spiel that's a little more technical so they can't make a decision on it, if that makes sense. So what I'm getting at here, so, you know, I'm trying to think, let's say recruitment companies, like it's very hard for us to sometimes ring for a recruitment company if we've got a ad hoc approach, you know, straight to market, because the market is saturated. So if we ring up and say, hi, it's actually from XYZ Recruitment, we're talking about recruitment needs, the receptionist will shut us down. So we need to come up with a spiel that's more along the lines of maybe about HR or the people in the business or something like that, that makes them feel like, okay, this isn't just a straightforward recruitment offer, maybe I should put them through to a decision maker, you know, to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other tip I'll give you as well is that you need to get a great list to call on if you're going to pitch to market, and part of that is about getting good decision maker names, because receptionists and gatekeepers can smell a sales call a mile away if you don't have a name. So for example, if I rang up and said, oh, I'm just wondering who looks after HR, that's when they ask, who, you know, what's the call regarding? So you're better off saying, you know, doing your research, maybe even on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great resource these days. You can find, you know, so many decision maker names. So then you might ring up and say, look, I'm just wondering, is John still looking after HR? Oh yeah, okay, great. Well look, I'd love to have a chat with him, you know, something along those lines. So Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, fantastic. All right, so we've done objection handling. And what we're going to look at next, so the steps in the process so far, again to recap, have been mastering our mindset, doing some great preparation around the spiel before we actually go to market. Then we do a great pitch, we ask some great questions, we handle those objections, and now we're going to come to the close. Now, I love that usually when we follow the sales process, if you have done it well, you should inevitably come to the close anyway. So what I mean by that is, when I call on the promo donna, on a campaign for us, we know that we've been successful and that we've got the sale. When someone says, oh, well, look, this sounds great, what's the next step? Can I meet with your director? Let's set it up. So it's almost like the prospect is asking for the close themselves. But again, that isn't always achievable. I know a lot of people say, well, the close is the hardest part for me because I kind of think, I've handled all their objections, they've asked me lots of questions, where do I go to from here? So I wanted to share today a few of the closing techniques that I like to use. And again, this doesn't have to just be on the phone. This can be used when you're networking, when you're following up a proposal, whatever that may be. So closing technique number one is the assumptive close. Now, what I mean by the assumptive close is you use assumptive wording to assume that that prospect is going to convert and work with you. So I'll give you an example here that, with the promo donna, when I do a pitch, I'll go and meet with someone, then I'll do a proposal for them, and I'll usually send that proposal through and follow up with a phone call. Now, when I'm talking to them on that phone call, I will talk to them as if they've already become a client. I'll say, well, look, John, when you go ahead with us and run the workshop that we're going to run, is there anyone else that needs to be involved? Or, John, when you start the campaign with us, this is how it's going to proceed, blah, 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 blah. So that assumptive wording works wonders. And also when you're on the phone just trying to generate some new business, for example, assumptive closes can really help when you're talking about, say, the days that you'd like to meet them. So, it might be, well, John, when we get together and meet, would you like me to bring along some information on XYZ? Or, John, when we get together and meet, is there anyone else that should be involved on that conversation? So assumptive closes are really powerful. It's probably one of my favourite closing techniques. The second closing technique is the hard close. Now, I know a lot of people kind of hear that and go, oh, I don't want to be that cheesy salesperson and, do the hard sell. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that you are, kind of being aggressive or, kind of pushing people into something they don't want to do. I guess what I mean by the hard close is really being prepared and confident enough to ask for the sale when it's there for the taking. And I'll give you an example here of a time I didn't do a hard sell and I regretted it because it's a good learning for everyone. So I met with a prospective client about a year ago. And as I said to you guys, my normal process is when I sell is I will go out to a meeting, I'll find out all about their business, and then I'll do a proposal and follow up after. Now, what was different about this company was when I met with him, he gave me all the buying signals in that appointment. Like he wanted to sign there and then on the day. He didn't even need a proposal. He said to me, Ash, what are the next steps? How do we get started? What I should have done, or how I should have been prepared, is to have some documents there to say, well, John, if you want to go ahead, it's as simple as making a time for the workshop, here's our terms and conditions, let's get started, that kind of thing. But what I did was I actually said, well, look, John, I'm going to go back, I'm going to do a proposal for you, then I'll follow up, and guess what? He went cold. He went cold, and I'm still chasing him to this day. I'm going to be pleasantly persistent. I'm still going to get it. I've got my eye set on it, but that's just an example of a hard close where it's more about preparation than being aggressive with someone, and again having the confidence to ask for the sale when it's ripe for the picking. Any questions about that one? No, that's also pretty straightforward. And then lastly, there's the now or never close. Now, I love this one because this can be really good for companies that maybe have a discount or a membership or something of those along those lines. And I'll actually share another story here with you very quickly of how someone used the now or never close on me and it worked. So I'm actually a part of a women's network. They run Australia-wide, but I was a member for a few years and then they changed CEOs. And I hadn't re-signed for that reason because I didn't really know the CEO and that kind of thing. But I used to actually speak for this network a lot. And they know that I love speaking and presenting. So what they did is they actually rang me up, and it was the director, and she introduced herself and she said, Ash, we'd love you back as a member. What I'd love to offer you is some speaking gigs. And I said, oh, brilliant, you know, like I'd love to, you know, sign up for these presenting and these dates. And she said, but the thing is, we need you to sign up for a membership today if you want those speaking gigs. And I went, oh, you know, but the fact was they really honed in on something that I really love and that was important to me. And I thought, well, for the price of the membership and what I'm getting, that's great. But again, they made it a now or never. You know, if you don't sign today, those speaking slots might go. So you need to, you know, make sure you sign up. So I went ahead and I did it. It was very, very smart. So, you know, you could do that for things like, you know, with the restaurant, it might be, you know, that people, if they don't come in tonight, then they can't get that kind of discount, or, you know, something along those lines that's going to create more of a sense of urgency, you know, with your prospective client. We've gone through the sales process, as I said, that we run each and every day when we're on the phones. But again, you can use in-person, networking, whatever it may be. But I wanted to just point out a few extra things that I think are so integral when it comes to selling, whether it is, again, cold calling or, you know, lead generation, whatnot. Following up is so paramount. Now, I know there was a woman here earlier today that was actually asking the question about direct mail campaigns. Remember, she was saying, is direct mail still around? Does anyone still do it? And I see a lot of companies that still do it, whether that's in hard copy or whether it's in email format. One thing that would catapult the results that they're generating is by picking up the phone and following up the prospects, which I think, again, she mentioned, and I couldn't agree more. Because I'll give you an example here. I was speaking with a client earlier this week, and she said to me, Ash, you know, I've got this new sales technique or a new way of prospecting people. I'm honing in on LinkedIn. And I said, okay, well, tell me about your process. What are you doing? She said, I'm searching for all the people that are a great ideal client or a fit for me on LinkedIn. And what I'm then doing is sending them sales messages via LinkedIn. And I kind of hesitated there because I was like, it was a little bit like they were mentioned earlier when, you know, you hear your client has a great idea, but you know they could be probably doing something a little bit better to make that strategy even more successful. So I said to her, well, what results are coming from those messages? She said, I'm not hearing from anyone. Like, no one's writing back to me. And I said, well, are you picking up the phone and calling these people after you've sent a message? And she said, do I really have to do that? And I said, well, you do, because I believe, again, that it's going to really increase a much better success rate when she actually picks up the phone, makes it more personal, and it looks professional as well. You know, these days, companies are not following up. So if you want to stay ahead of your competitors, by following up on time every time, you are going to look that much more professional, and it's probably going to ensure that you're going to get the business that you want. So a few follow-up techniques that I've given you there. Tell the prospect you're obviously going to be following up. Get commitment for a follow-up by establishing a date and time. Now that one's really important because, again, I hear, and when I teach a lot of people with sales, and they've written a sales proposal for someone, and I say, well, why didn't you get the close? You know, did you follow up your proposal? That's where it's fallen down. They've sent out a proposal and then they've chased their tails. They've been calling all these people on the phone and not reaching them. That could have been changed if they said, look, John, picked up the phone, I'm sending you your proposal today, just making sure that you're going to receive it. Now, just to let you know, I'm going to call you back next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Does that suit you? Lock it in the diary so that you get the commitment from him to talk through the proposal, because not only does it mean that he'll be there, but it also means that he'll probably read the proposal that you've written for him. So getting commitment's very, very important. I also mentioned calling on time. Every time is very paramount. Being politely persistent or pleasantly persistent. A question that I always get asked is, how many times do you call someone before you give up? And the asking them, and I say, no, this is what's key, being pleasantly persistent. So if I call someone, and it's a bit like that one that I want to win that I pitched to about a year ago, I might touch base with him maybe once every couple of weeks. The first time, if he's not there, I won't leave a message, but maybe I'll follow up in a few weeks after. We'll leave a message, maybe send a follow-up email. So just be pleasantly persistent, but showing that you are still going to be very determined to get the business and kind of win them over. And always being on time for a follow-up. And then the last slide that I've got up here is about rejection. Now I mentioned earlier that, you know, that fear of rejection is so true for people when it comes to sales. Hopefully from the slides I showed you today, you know, you can understand that it's not always a rejection. If it's an objection, it may easily be overcome. But I am a big believer that even for those people, you know, the guy that you mentioned that might come in and say, well, I'm just not interested, you know, they just don't care. The fact is, the business world, whatever business you're in, is so rapidly changing every day. And I believe the position your business is in now, or the client, the prospective client's business now, to where it will be in 3 months might be very, very different. So that's why I've put up here that I believe like a no is never a no. So if someone says to me today, look, I don't really need the Promo Donna's services, I'll say, okay, that's great, but do you mind if I keep in touch with you? You know, whether that's by email or, you know, again, doing that follow-up call. Because I believe, again, if you follow up with them consistently, you may find that, again, you're ahead of your competitors and you're going to find them when the timing's right. So it's important to keep in touch, keep notes, keep ownership. Do any of you guys have a CRM that you work from? Yeah. See a few nods. Yep. So CRMs are really, really fantastic for this. A CRM is essentially a customer relationship management tool. What it can do is actually, you know, manage all of the leads, and you can put in there, you know, what was the last conversation that you had? When do you want to follow up with them? It might even flag a date for you to follow up with, which is fantastic, because if you speak to John and you have that conversation, you call him back in 3 months and say, hey John, the last time we spoke, you said that, you know, you were working on your sales strategy. How's that gone for you? He's going to go, oh yeah, I do remember that, and yeah, I appreciate you following up. This has happened, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, CRMs are really important.
What CRM do you use?
Great question. So there are so many out there in the marketplace that this is a key question I get asked. We actually use Pipedrive at the Promo Donna. Now that's for our own calling though. So if we are calling for the Promo Donna to generate new business, it's all through Pipedrive. When we are calling for other companies, they all have different CRMs. So we're very familiar with, you know, Infusionsoft, Zoho, Salesforce. There's so many different ones. And if you guys ever had any questions around what's the best one to use, I'm happy to have a chat with you, because it's very tailored to a business, I guess is what I would say, because I was speaking to someone the other day about this, that, you know, Infusionsoft is probably for a large organisation that needs a lot of different templates and a lot of different strategies and whatnot, whereas Pipedrive is very simple, easy to use. You can see your pipeline at a glance, things like that. So, yeah, so that's that. All right, guys. So, yeah, we've come to the end of my presentation. I hope that you've obviously got a lot of tips and techniques out of that you can use, again, whether you're on the phone or in any sales situation. One thing that I'm offering to all of the attendees here is a bit of a free lead generation review, I guess is what you would call it. So again, I'm very passionate about helping business owners to look at what they're currently doing, and it may even be that you're not doing much when it comes to lead gen. So over that hour consultation, what I can actually do is have a chat with you, see if there are some gaps in what you're doing, or if there are some things that you could be leveraging off that you may not currently be. and you know, how I might be able to help you with that. So if you're interested in doing that, I'd love to, you know, maybe grab your business card or something like that, and you can always get in contact with me via that email address as well. Are there any questions before we finish up?
That's good.
I just wanted to say
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Because I'm an insurance broker,
Yes.
can you imagine how hard it is for me to get through the gatekeeper?
We have worked with a lot of insurance brokers before, and you're right, it is quite hard. It depends on your target market. So do you know, home specifically in certain markets, or? Traction, and where maybe we didn't get we're using. So yeah, if you'd like a chat, I'd be happy to talk through that. Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you still do the
Good morning, everybody. It's Friday. Look at this superb day. You're probably wondering, what am I doing in the middle of nowhere? Well, actually, I am at the Mornington golf course, and today we have a special thing happening where we are covering Power Your Business. We're having really top leaders, business leaders, to help you if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a professional looking to get that cutting edge to have success in your business. Today, as I said, I'm at Mornington, and what a perfect location it is. At the back of me, I've got the beautiful ocean. I'm not sure if you can see it, but definitely it's there, and it's stunning. It is a fantastic location, and Rhiannon Pilton is the event host today, and she's gathered a room full of business leaders that are going to teach us how to do some strategies to have a successful business. Now, the first half of the day is all about sales. We all know as business owners, if you can't make sales, then you don't have a business. So we've got some, you know, top leaders that are going to talk about, you know, sales, cash flow, how to actually network. That's going to be the first half. The second half is all about marketing. It's about social media. It's about content. It's about SEO, websites. So she has really done a lot of effort into presenting this beautiful, beautiful event, which is happening in Mornington Peninsula. So this is where I am. Beautiful location. It is chilly this morning, but we're ready to go. The Business Live and CBN team, we are on location early. We are setting up stuff and just ready to bring our viewers and fans and Power Your Business fans a fantastic coverage today. So stay tuned. Make sure that you do jump on board and follow us and have some learnings that you can apply immediately in your business. So bye for now.